All right. So, hi everyone who is joining live, and hello to anyone who is watching this as a replay. Yeah, last week we did a chat with Claudia, and next week we've got a chat scheduled with Andrea. But this week we're gonna do a more traditional Behance thing where we're going to make a project inside of Adobe Animate. And this is going to include like some really interesting like differing bits. So we're going to have dynamic snowfall generated through code. And then we're going to have a look at animating with the new modern rigging feature that was released 2 days ago in the newest December release of Animate. This is a major new feature for Adobe Animate. So it's going to be fun to use. Yeah, so first things first, I've got a document open here. And actually, first things first, you know, let me know how you're doing in the chat, what you're up to, the things that you're, you know, working on creatively and so forth. And secondarily, I've got my little FLA file created here, and this is a HTML5 canvas document. I wasn't sure if I was going to create this as HTML5 canvas or as ActionScript 3.0. But I figure let's make it more accessible for everything to be able to actually, you know, produce the content on the web if you wanted to, make it interactive and so forth, and usable. Use HTML5 canvas instead of just having it be a video or a GIF file or something like that with ActionScript 3.0, which is perfectly legit still for animation purposes. And one of the cool things about ActionScript 3.0 documents and dynamic code generation is like anything that's coded dynamically actually will get rendered properly to you know, to your MP4 file or whatever it is you're producing. So that's pretty cool. Hey, William. Glad to see you on here between your classes. What are you teaching today? And let's pop into Photoshop. Wow, we wait for see if William wants to share what he's teaching. So my classes are over. This is finals week for University of Colorado Boulder. And most of my classes are completely done, but I have one class, the finals were due yesterday. And I've got a lot of stuff to grade after this, so a lot of finals to grade. Oh, so William says, middle competitions, video and graphic design for Skills USA. That's cool. What do you use for that? Is it all like Premiere and Photoshop and Illustrator? I'm not super familiar with Skills USA. I've heard of it before, but Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, and After Effects. Cool. Yeah, and I mean, you know, Animate isn't the only thing that had an update in December. Like a lot of these applications did. I know a lot of the video and audio apps were grouped in with that big update, so that's pretty cool. All right, so let's see here. I've got my background. This is from Adobe stock, but I want to make it a little darker, and I want to change. I mean, maybe just changing the coloring of this here. Let's go to our. Oh, how do I want to do this? Maybe hue saturation. Put an adjustment layer on here and just kind of like cool things off a little bit. Ooh. Yeah. Colorize. There we go. Cool things off a bit. Because if I don't do that, right, then we've got the original image here from Adobe stock, and it's a little too bright and warm. So let's go ahead and do that. And that's pretty good. I think that'll actually work. I was going to put an overlay to darken it as well, but this looks really good as it is. Maybe I'll just take the lightness down a bit. And yeah, perfect. Well, William, good luck to all of your students. We have, it's still finals week, as I mentioned, here in Colorado. And we have a high wind warning today. So we're expecting like 80 to 100 mile per hour winds across most of Colorado. So yeah, I hope it's not too disruptive for everyone. All right, so what I'm gonna do, instead of exporting this from Photoshop, I'm just gonna do a little clip of it, just using the shortcuts on my Mac here. So do a little Shift Command 5. And Windows also has a little snipping tool, right? That you can just kind of snippy snip snip. That'll save it to my keyboard. I'll save it to my clipboard. And that's all we need from Photoshop. Let's pop back over into Animate. And all I need to do in Animate, since it's on my clipboard, just paste it in. And there we go. So, you know, I've got a decision to make. I could shrink this image down, this background image, to the proper size that I want from my canvas, for my stage, or I could go to my document settings right here, and I could just choose to match the contents, and then I've got the width and height of the image that I actually pasted in from Photoshop using the snipping tool and my keyboard and all that stuff. And that's all we need to do for that. I'm gonna rename this layer 1, BG for background. I'm gonna lock it down. So there's 2 parts to this today. The first part I'm gonna do is to actually go through and create some dynamic snow with code. So for that, I want to create a new layer. I'm gonna name that layer Actions. As we do, lock it down so I can't actually place any visual content inside of that layer. And then I have to make some snow. So, oops. I'm gonna create another layer, call it Scratch. I oftentimes use a scratch layer, and I do this with like Photoshop and XD and stuff like that, where I want to just like draw something, but it's meant to be kind of temporary, just like a scratch pad. So I'm choosing my ellipse or my oval tool here, and inside of my tool properties, my fill, what color is snow usually, right? It's white, but sometimes it has a little bit of a blue tint to it as well. So I could, of course, you know, choose something like this, just to give it that little bit of a blue tint. And for a stroke, I don't want a stroke at all. And yeah, let's take down the opacity a little bit, like 90%. And then what we need to do is just click and drag to make a little circle. And that's a really big snowflake. That's not gonna work. So what we can do is actually go through here and just change the width and the height. So I don't know, maybe 6 pixels might work. Yeah, that's pretty good. And what I want to do to this snowflake here, if I go in like 200%, we can see it better. Let's go in like 400%. There we go. It almost looks like a little moon. But what we want to do is just kind of like, I don't know. We want to create this as a movie clip symbol. And as a movie clip symbol, we'll be able to actually go through and address it directly from the library to create different instances. So that's kind of the workflow here. Using code, we're going to dig into the library and we're going to pull out and populate the stage with different instances of this little snowflake. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go over to my quick actions under my object here, and we're going to convert this to a symbol. I want it to be addressable through code, so I'm going to make it a movie clip symbol, and I'm going to name it Snowflake. And hit OK. So at this point, I can actually delete this from the stage if I wanted to, but I can also go inside and make any sort of adjustments I might need. I don't think there's any adjustments I need really, so I'm just gonna delete it from my main timeline from the stage. So now my scratch layer is empty again, and I can draw other things in here if I want to, but if we look in our library right here, we can see we've got our bitmap that was pasted in from Photoshop, and we have our little snowflake. So yeah, I mean, I could just pull out little snowflakes here. Yeah, this is gonna work out pretty good if I wanted to, but again, we're gonna do this through code. So what do we need to do in order to address library items through JavaScript? Because we are, again, using HTML5 Canvas. HTML5 Canvas uses JavaScript because it's native to the web. So what we need to do is give it a linkage ID. You can see I have a linkage column right here in the library. And if I double click, I can actually give this an identifier. I can give it a name. So let's go ahead and name this, I don't know, Snowflake. You can name it the same thing, it's fine. So the movie clip symbol name is Snowflake, and the linkage ID is Snowflake. Right on. So now that I've got that taken care of, I can start writing some code and actually generating stuff here. So I'm gonna click on this empty keyframe in my actions layer and choose window, actions. It's gonna bring up my, there it is, my actions panel right here, where I can go and start actually writing some code. We can see the current frame is frame 1 of the actions layer. Tells me that right here. And HTML5 Canvas is cool because you can use the wizard to actually construct interactions step by step. However, I actually want to just do this manually. I don't think there's really code for this that's in there. So one thing that I need to do is figure out the stage height and the stage width. So for this, I'm gonna say var, maybe sh for stage height, and set that equal to stage.canvas. So that's the canvas element that's representative of the stage in HTML. And I'm gonna get the height. I'm gonna do the same thing for the width, because that's gonna help us sprinkle the snow, right, at different locations. So SW for stage width, set that equal to stage canvas width. Great. So now that I've got that, I need to set up, let's see. I probably need to set up a little ticker inside of my content. This is sort of like a heartbeat that's constantly running. And the way that the ticker works inside of HTML5 Canvas is it runs per the FPS setting. So if we look in our properties, in our document properties, I have my frames per second set to 24 frames per second. So that means that if I create a ticker using create.js and JavaScript, I'm gonna be able to execute the code that I have in my ticker 24 times every second. It's tied directly to that. So let's do some creative coding here. So I'm gonna say create.js dot, and you can see we get inanimate, a lot of little helpers here. I'm gonna want to reference my ticker. Create.js always has a ticker object. And inside of the ticker, I'm gonna say on. And what I want to have it fire on tick. So every, again, 24 times every second. And for this, I'm gonna say Snowfall. So Snowfall is gonna be the name of a function that executes every time my ticker ticks, right? So let's say, let's create my function here. So function Snowfall. And by the way, this is kind of fun because I don't really do code anymore. I used to be a software engineer, so I used to do a lot of code. It's not something I do very much anymore, but projects like this allow me to go through and do that. And I know it's not something you usually see on Behance, but you know, stick with it. We are gonna see some neat stuff with this code, and afterwards we'll look at modern rigging with that new functionality inside of Animate. So again, just checking the chat. I don't see anything new, but yeah, let me know what you're all up to. I always like to hear from people who are here live. So inside of Snowfall, what are we going to do? We're going to have our little, we're going to generate our snow, and we also need to go through and, gosh, we need to actually create some stuff as well. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll kind of put a, what do you call it? Just put a hold on that, because before we actually make the snow fall, we need to generate all the different pieces of snow. So I'm going to create a new function underneath here to generate my snow. And I'm going to call this snowstorm. And inside of snowstorm, I just want to go in a loop, right? And I want to be able to generate a certain number of snowflakes. So I'm going to pass in a little variable here. Let's call it SF for snowflakes. It's going to be our snowflake count. So maybe SFC, let's call it that, snowflake count. So here we're going to go through and do a loop once snowstorm is called. So I'm going to say for, it's a for loop, and we're going to create a new variable, just called I. It's pretty standard. I'm going to set equal to the snowflake count. So however many snowflakes we actually want to generate, right? Our conditional is going to be if I is greater than or equal to 0. Then we're going to run the loop, and each iteration of the loop, we're going to remove 1 from the snowflake count. So I negative negative. That's going to remove 1 from the count. And from here, this is where we actually tap in to our library. So if we look back at our library, we can see we have the linkage ID of snowflake for our snowflakes. And what I'm going to do is set a new variable called SF for snowflake. And let's see, we'll set that variable equal to a new library object. So new lib dot snowflake. Pretty cool. And now I can address this variable snowflake however I want. So I can set its X and Y position. So let's say snowflake X, set that equal to something. So if I wanted it to be like, I don't know, 200 pixels, I could do that, right? However, that's not so useful. I want to actually have the snowflakes generate across the top of my canvas at random locations. So that's another thing we need to do, is to set up a randomization function that we can call anytime we want to randomize things. So let's create a new function. And actually I'll create it above my snowstorm function. And actually let's create it up top because it is sort of a utility function. And we'll just call this, and it's tricky. because there's lots of like randomize functions. So we'll just call it randomize. It is not a reserved word in JavaScript, thank goodness. And what we're going to do is pass in a min and a max. So what is the minimum part, the minimum location over on the left side of the stage? What's the maximum location on the right side of the stage that we want to generate snowflakes? So inside of this function, we're going to just return a mathematical function, right? So we're going to say here, return, and we'll use a math function that's inherent to JavaScript, and that's math.round. And, or let's do math.random. No, we'll do math.round here. Let's do math.round. And then inside of here, we're going to round up a random number. So we'll do math.random. And this formula here is super, super useful. I use it for all sorts of different things. What we do is we take a random number and we multiply it by our max that we've passed in. And then what we do is we actually go through and outside of the parentheses, we add the minimum amount to that. That's going to return a discrete number somewhere between our min and our max, right? This is a formula that is golden. Like you can use this for all sorts of different things. It's great for gaming. It's great for procedural, dynamic, generative content like this. It's so super useful. I'm just looking to make sure, did I write that right? It's been a while. So yeah, randomize. That's the function we're going to use. Pass in a min and a max. So back to our snowstorm, instead of 200 for our X position that goes from, 0 to whatever, in terms of the stage width, what we're going to do is actually go through and, figure this out dynamically. So how do we do that? Well, what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll say, because remember up here, we've got our stage width, right? That's getting the width of our canvas. So what we'll say is, instead of 200, we're going to say randomize. We're going to pass in a minimum value, which is going to be 0 at the very left of the stage. And we're going to pass in a maximum value based on the stage height. So SH that we've already defined up top. Oops, that should be SW. It's the width, right? So very similarly, stage snowflake Y position. So if we generate all of these at the same height, that's great. They're gonna just like be there. But we also want to generate them at different heights above the stage, because that's going to allow them to fall at different rates, right? Or different origin points. So let's go ahead and set our Y. Again, we'll set it equal to randomize. So, at this point in the code, it's easy to just copy and paste your different code, right? So in terms of where I want it to show up, I don't know, maybe negative 500. So start at 500 pixels above the stage. And then we're going to make the maximum be the stage height. So they'll always generate above the stage, but at varying stops, right? So let's see, what else do we want to do here? I guess we just want to add these to our content. So we could add them, right, to, what do you call it? We could add them to our actual, just outside of any sort of container whatsoever, right? But it's actually really useful inside of Create.js to create a container object and then add them to that container, because then you can loop over the children of that container to do certain things, right? So let's go ahead and create a new variable just right underneath our stage height and our stage width. And we're gonna call this snow container. Be very descriptive in our variable names here, and we're gonna create that as a new create.js container. And you can see the autocomplete is helping me out here, which is always nice. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the regex of this container to pretty much the middle of our stage width, right? So we're gonna say, hey Reverb Mike, how are you doing today? The snowflakes are definitely gonna be contained that we're generating here. So the X registration point is gonna be the center point for this. Let's set that to, so our stage width, SW, but we're going to divide that by 2. And by the way, I suck at math. I'm terrible at math. So, you know, using computers to do it has been like a great thing for my career. The thing is, you can just get like certain expressions, certain formulae, and just use them over and over again. As long as you know what they do, it's gonna work. This is like the simplest little math thing. You're just dividing it by 2, right? So if the stage width is 700, it's gonna place the X registration at 350, right? So what we're gonna do is add this container as a child of our stage. So we're gonna say this in reference to our current stage. We're gonna say add child, and then pass in that child object. The child object is gonna be our snow container. And there we go, then it's gonna be there. So now that we've got a snow container added to the stage, yeah, exactly. So Reverb Mike says that he used a calculator to do math. And that's basically what I'm doing too, right? Animate's just working as, right, a calculator. Because, yeah, who wants to do math? I don't. So what we're gonna do is go back to our snowstorm function, and we've got our X and Y position set. But the thing is, like, even though we've created an instance of the snowflake at this point, and we've set its X and Y position, it isn't actually visible to anyone yet. So if somebody ran this right now, yeah, it's generating, you know, a certain number of snowflakes for the snowstorm, but they're not being added to the visual stage of Canvas yet. So what we need to do is we can reference snow container, which is already on the stage, and we just say add child. And what do we pass in to our snow container? We pass in SF, our snowflake. And it's a little messy because some of these variables I'm naming completely, and other ones I'm just giving them sort of like code names like SF, but yeah. So that's our snowstorm function. So now what we need to do is invoke this function. And that's the last thing we want to do down here, line 25, snowstorm, and we want to pass in however many snowflakes we want to generate. So I don't know, let's do, I don't know, 500 snowflakes? Can increase the size of our snowstorm. So now this ticker that we created before, right? Again, this runs every 24 times every single second. Goes off our FPS setting inside of our document properties, right? And that's set to 24 FPS. So what we want to do is make the snowfall fall, right? So let's go ahead and take care of that. So for, hey guy. So for that, what we're gonna do is inside of our heartbeat here, our ticker function, we are going to say, we're gonna look at each individual snowflake. We're gonna see what its position is. And we're gonna increase its Y position so it goes further and further down the stage to create snow. So let's go ahead and create another for loop. And I'll create another variable called I. And this time, I is going to equal, oh, not snowstorm, what is it? Snow container. So what we want to do is loop over, right, all of the children that we just added to snow container. So we're going to say snow container dot children. Look at that. So we get an array of children. Well, we don't, do we need to get an array? No, we want num children. Num children is going to give us and I spelled children completely wrong there, which is perfect. So num children. So the number of children of the snow container object, right? And we're going to do this. We're going to forget about that first one just because the number of children indexes. So this is an array, right? That we're going to be grabbing from, as we just saw. And arrays in JavaScript and in ActionScript, the initial array position is always 0. So that means we have to remove 1 unit. Oops, that was silly. Let's fix that. We have to remove 1 unit from the number of children to get the proper index of the array, since it does start at 0 and not at 1. So let's go ahead and say what our condition is here for this loop to continue running. That's going to be if I is greater than or equal to 0, because that is, again, the index of our array. And we're going to do I minus minus. That is going to remove or decrease I each time this runs. So we'll go through and look at every single one of those snowflakes, all 500 of them. All right, so within this for loop, what we need to do is we need to create a temporary variable to express and inspect each particular snowflake. So I'm going to say var, and this is going to be s for snowflake. We're going to set this equal to snow container. Copy and paste that. And yeah, we can say snow container dot get child at. And see that get child at index. So we're getting the index. That index is I, because we're in a loop, right? And we're basing that loop off of all the children of our container. So we got 500 children here. So this is getting the instance that we added down here so we can do stuff with it. What do we want to do? We want to do s, which is our snowflake, and we want to change its y position. So we set s.y equal to, actually plus equals, because we want it to go down, right? And I don't know how I don't know, 20? And this is going to be experimental. I'm not sure. This is going to be how fast, you know, the snowflake's y position changes. So it's going to change 24 times per second. So 20 might be even too fast. Maybe let's, I don't know, 6. And we can increase this or decrease it as much as we want, right? The last thing we need to do, and actually we could test this right now. Maybe we should test this because it's been a lot of code without seeing any visuals. So let's go ahead and test movie. Ooh, it's nice looking. Look at that. All right, so I'm gonna refresh this. So it makes like a wall of snow right now. And there's another problem here. So I'm on a, I'm probably on a high density display here. So something we need to do is actually set the width and height of the canvas times 2. Let's try to do that. And there is a object. There we go. Now it's falling all across our scene. But notice what happens, right? It goes through and it stops because they all fall off the stage and nothing's being generated any longer. So what do we need to do? We need to reset their position after they fall off the stage. Bring them back up to the top, just recycle those snowflakes. And actually, I don't know, that's pretty good. So let's go ahead and inside of our ticker function here, we want to check against the Y property to see if it's gone past the stage height, right? So we're going to say if, was it S dot Y? If S dot Y is greater than our stage height, SH, and, you know, maybe you'll have a little buffer here too so it doesn't like blip out. And there's, so plus, I don't know, plus 20 pixels. So if the Y position is greater than stage height plus 20, then we want to reset it. So we do basically the same thing we got down here, right? So we get that randomize function again for the Y position. So S dot Y, set it equal to randomize. We started at -500, max is the actual stage height, and it's just gonna loop over and over again, just like Reverb Mike's saying inside of the chat right there. Just gonna loop and loop and loop and loop forever. As long as the ticker runs, it's gonna just keep doing it. So let's give that a go there. Yeah. So it should have stopped by now, but it doesn't. It just keeps looping. Now there's lots of things we could do to make this more realistic, right? One thing we could do, we could adjust the size of each snowflake. We could also adjust the speed of each snowflake too, which is kind of fun. So let's try to do those things. And how would we do those, right? So what we would do is just use our randomization function again. So like right here, SF dot, now I've got to think. What is the property for, is it alpha? Is it opacity? I think it's opacity. We'll find out soon enough. And we'll set that opacity equal to, again, we'll set it to our randomization function. And we'll set the minimum opacity to, it's probably something like 0.2. Maximum opacity is 1. So we'll see if this breaks our code. Huh? Didn't break it. Yeah. I don't know as if, opacity might not be the thing, right? Maybe it is alpha. See, I can't remember is the problem. Oh, there we go. It's alpha. You can see there. Some of the snowflakes are very, very transparent and some are very opaque. So this brings more set of randomization into this, but we could also go through, right? And let's up that up a little bit. 4 to, let's do 0.9. So what we can also do, instead of alpha, let's do our scale for our snowflakes. So I can't remember if this is inside of JavaScript, if it's X scale or scale X. I think it's scale X. And we'll set that equal to, again, you know, something between, I don't know, 0.2 and 1. Something like that. And we'll set scale Y equal to scale X so that we retain that aspect ratio. It'll still be a complete circular snowflake. So hopefully I guessed right. And, oh yeah, I did. Look at that. Huh. That's great. So yeah, now we got snowflakes of varying sizes as well. Let's actually change these up a little bit. Let's do, instead of 0.2, let's do 0.5. And here, let's do this. Yeah, let's just do 0.5 to 0.9 on each of these. So I'm thinking I've got my math wrong here, because if we look, you know what? I think it's that rounding value I'm using, because we're going point. Yeah, this needs a little more thought, because this randomization function is bringing back whole numbers because we're rounding. What if we get rid of this rounding mechanism here? Let's see if this helps. There we go. So now it's not rounding those anymore. All right, so it's going pretty good, but let's change the speed as well. This is the last thing we're gonna do inside the code, right? So I'm setting my scale, my alpha. Speed is not something that's inherent to a movie clip symbol, but we should be able to add objects and address them later on. So let's go ahead and randomize this. Right now, I think we're going, what, 20? Yeah, 20 is pretty good. Let's go between 10 for speed and 30. So 20 will be our baseline. And then up here, instead of, oh, we're doing 6. I don't know where I got 20 from. So if 6 is our baseline, let's go 2 and 10 for speed. And instead of 6 right here, we're gonna set it equal to S, which is the snowflake object, speed. Test it out. Yeah, so that makes a big difference right there. See that? That's pretty cool. And I tell you, I always used to love, you know, doing creative stuff with code like this. It's like generating things. And it just goes on forever. So we got a nice little snowfall here. And, you know, I mean, we can change different aspects of this however we want. We can say, like, you know, maybe that speed is a bit much. So let's actually take it down a little bit. Maybe from 1 to 8. Right? It's gonna slow it down. I want like a flurry more than an actual snowstorm. So let's go in here. And yeah, so we've written a nice chunk of code here. We set our stage height, our stage width based off the canvas height and width. We've got a snow container to contain all of our snowflakes. We set its registration X, so it's nicely centered in the stage. We've added the snow container to the stage. We have our randomization utility function, which returns something between min and max. We have our create.js ticker, and on tick, so 24 times per frame, we're going to invoke Snowfall, which is our heartbeat function. There we loop over every child inside of our container, and we set its Y position so that it falls based on its speed. And we check to see if that snowflake has gone past the bottom of the stage. If it has, we reset it to a random position above the stage. And here's our snowstorm function, which is invoked down here. We pass in 500 snowflakes. Now, this is cool. We could double that. Let's do 1,000 snowflakes. And then we have a loop that generates each of those snowflakes and sets random attributes for X, Y, alpha, and speed. And we add that to our snow container. So this is pretty solid code, right? Haven't lost my touch. And there we go. There's with 1,000 snowflakes. All right, cool. Well, let's close out our actions panel and go back to our timeline, because that was part one of what we're dealing with here, right? What we also want to do is we want to look at that new feature inside of Animate that allows modern rigging. So this is something that came out 2 days ago. And what we're going to do... Can you add a floor? Reverb Mike asks. Yeah, so the snow collects on the floor. Yeah, I mean, that's a totally different approach. Like, I'm just recycling each snowflake, but yeah, you could check to see whether, you know, the snowflakes have hit a certain Y position, and then you can stop them and they'll just sit there visually and then just keep on creating more snowflakes up top. You'd have to do it a little bit differently because, you know, then you'd have to be always generating new snowflakes for each snowflake that kind of like gets frozen to the ground, right? But yeah, definitely something you could do. So I'm gonna rename Scratch to Snowman. Let's go ahead and make a little snowman on here, and then we'll animate our snowman. So for a snowman, what do we need? We need the oval tool again. And we're gonna make a 3-tiered snowman. And notice my snowman here, it's just using those same settings. Let's make this a little more opaque. We'll set the alpha to 100%. And I'll build my snowman right there. So we got the beginnings of our snowman, and let's zoom in a bit more so we can work on him. So yeah, this is an interesting stream because we've got, you know, very developer-centric stuff at the beginning through creative coding practices with Create.js, create that dynamic Snowfall, but then we've got very designery stuff happening right now with just the UI and the tools. So here's our snowman right now. Maybe I'll lighten him up just a little bit. There we go. That way he stands out from the background. So from here, what do I want to do? I want to add some stick arms. So I'm going to choose my line tool. Stroke size. That's way too big. That's better. So let's make them stick color, which is some sort of brown, right? Most sticks are brownish. Give him some arms. And let's give him some decorative buttons of coal. For that black coal. Though I usually don't like to use pure black on things. So let's go ahead and take that black to gray. And I don't want these to be completely circular. So let's go ahead and deform them a little bit. And we'll give him the traditional 3 buttons here, right? I should have done that over here first because it's eating into my snowman, right? Shapes inside of Animate will, they will eat into each other. So we could use, you know, groups, we could use drawing objects, all sorts of different mechanisms. If we don't want that to happen, in this case, I don't really care. But I don't want them to end up all screwy either, so I'm gonna set them out up outside the snowman, then bring them over like this. There we go. Nice. And then I guess we need to focus on, oh, here, let's render these strokes as fills. So we're going to convert these lines to fills. And we could always modify them a little bit too, now that they're fills. Make them look a little more thick, a little more sticky, whatever you might want to do. More organic. And yeah, so let's go ahead and give him some eyes. I'm gonna base his eyes off of these coals here. That's pretty small, but it's okay. Oh, that's not good. Not good. Okay, let's select it first, then bring it over. Then I'm gonna make another one. Let's just rotate this a bit. Oop, that's not rotating, that's scaling. There we go. So building a little snowman. This is always a good exercise to do for people who are just learning Animate as well. There's a lot of things you can learn inside of Animate from building a snowman. I guess the last thing to do is give him a little nose. Little nose. So I drag that out there, but let's change its properties. Give him a carrot nose. Change that style or width profile. Something like that. And then all we need to do is just rotate this guy. And place him. Perfect. Actually, did I create, is this a stroke? That is a stroke. So let's go ahead and turn that into a fill as well. I'm not sure it matters that much, but I like to keep things consistent. So let's modify shape and convert lines to fills. Perfect. All right. So now if we look, we got our little snowman, and if we test it, there he is, right? But he's not doing anything quite yet, is he? So what we're gonna do is rig him using modern rigging. And we'll just have him do a little dance. Something like that. So let's select everything about the snowman, and we'll actually create this as a looping movie clip symbol inside of a symbol object, right? So I've selected all the parts of the snowman. I'm gonna use quick actions to convert to symbol. Movie clip, snowman. And then when we go inside the snowman, let's go maybe like 250. So here we are inside of our snowman movie clip symbol. We can see that up in the edit bar up here. And again, how's everybody doing today? Let me know how you're enjoying the day, how things are going, etc. All right, so here's the new stuff, right? So now that we got our snowman inside of Animate, and this is Animate 22.0.2. So if you haven't updated Animate, you're not going to see this. If I choose my asset warp tool, notice I can now create bones. There's a little toggle here to create bones. You used to be able to use the asset warp tool to create little pins and then like modify a distortion mesh. Now you're able to create actual bones inside of here and rig that up with hard or soft bones. Super, super cool. So let's go ahead and change the outline of this layer. I'm going to go into my layer properties. Let's darken it up so that we'll be able to see it a bit better. Maybe choose like a red. Red's always cool. All right, so with my asset warp tool selected, and the important thing here is to select everything about your shape, right? So if I go ahead and choose like, what do I want to be my kind of root bone? Maybe his waist. So let's click. All right, so we can see automatically I get a little joint here, and I get a distortion mesh around everything. This is going to allow me to actually go through here, and you can see there's a preview of the bone being created. So if I click down here, and let's give him some like little legs. So notice, you know, I don't want to create a bone from here to there. So what I need to do is actually select this little pelvic area here, this joint, and then I can pull out another bone from there. Same thing with our root bone here. I want to pull one up to his chest, and one up to his head, and the tip top of his head. And then if I want to extend, branch out these joints along his arms, I can do that as well. Let's actually just make that one big bone. And there we go. We've got this guy rigged up, right? So I'm gonna actually turn off my mesh right here, but you can change the mesh density using the mesh density slider. So if we pull that way up, you can see the mesh becomes much more complex. And if I pull it all the way down, it's less complex, right? So again, this is new stuff inside of Animate 22.0.2, but I'm gonna turn my mesh off. So all I have to do is look at my rig. Makes it kind of easier to work with, right? So there's other things we can do here too. We can create what's known as a freeze joint. So, you know, he's never going to move his little feet here. Feet. So I'm gonna create both of those as a freeze joint. What that will do is pin each of these little joints to the stage so that will never change. So now if I go up in here and I choose to move him with my root node, you can see I can do some like really interesting stuff with him. Let's pull out a little bit here. Yeah, so he'll always be frozen in those two joints at the bottom, no matter what I do. Any other joints and bones that I have here, I can move to reposition them. So if I want him to wave high, he can wave high. If I want him to do like a little kind of like dance, he could do that. All sorts of different stuff. If I wanted to just have him melt as things go on, that's fine too. Now, one thing I do want to do is make some adjustments to the types of bones. So as I said, we have hard bones and we have soft bones. So these are all hard bones right now. If I select a bone and I change it over here in my object properties to my soft bone, you can see what happens is you're able to actually like, you know, have him be kind of a pissed off stance. He's got his hands on his hips and he's like, you know, what's going on here, right? So soft bones, the difference between the soft bones and the hard bones is hard bones are going to stretch the artwork using the distortion mesh, and soft bones are going to, instead of stretching, they just completely deform, but they keep, as you can see, they keep sort of like the length of the bone, right? So there's interesting things you can do with all this stuff. So let's do a little bit of animation where he's sort of like, I don't know, maybe doing a little dance or something. So we're gonna start him off kind of like this. And then let's go to frame 10. We'll insert keyframe here. And as you can see, he's replicated. And let's have him go up a little bit. So everything kind of goes around with this distortion mesh, right? So now we've got two poses. this one, that one, this one, that one. So we'll just go through and create a couple of additional poses here. Put them back down there. And then let's copy this one, right? So we're gonna go ahead and copy that keyframe. Copy frames, yes. And then at frame 1 second here, blink keyframe, we'll go ahead and paste frames. And now if we go through and select all these, we'll be able to make him do a little dance. So let's add a classic tween, create classic tween to all those different keyframes. And he'll go ahead and be doing this weird little, yeah, this is like the saddest little snowman dance I've ever seen, right? But right now, these 2 frames right here at the 1 second mark and the 0 frame marker are exactly the same. So I'm gonna go back 1 frame and insert a keyframe. And then I'm going to remove the frame right there. So if we look, set our looping, loop to the whole deal. Oh yeah, he's having a really good time in the snow, right? So there's our little snowman. So, stop him from doing that. Go back to scene 1. And of course you could add easing to this too if you wanted to, right? So notice we're only on a single frame here, but because, you know, we're using a movie clip symbol, that's gonna allow the animation contained within the movie clip symbol to just continually loop, right? So let's check this out. What the hell? He's not doing exactly what I wanted him to do. Wonder why that is. Because it plays back just fine right here. Look at him go. But out here, for whatever reason, he just doesn't, he just goes back to his normal self. Well, I think that's a bug. I am going to submit that to the animate team, and they'll be able to fix it. Because he definitely shouldn't be doing it like that. And I don't think that pose even exists anymore in here. He's just like resetting to his initial pose, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Which is too bad. I wanted him to just kind of dance continually. One thing I could do is I could just kind of copy frames and just be like, yeah, let's go ahead and paste some frames in. I could make my own loop. Can make it as long as I want. Let's see if that fixes it for a little bit. Nope. Well, a little bit. Huh. So I kind of wonder if it's because it's inside of a movie clip or what the deal might be. I guess I shouldn't worry about it too much. Submit a little bug to the animate team and call it a day, right? Anyway, that's pretty cool. Aside from that glitchiness, yeah, he goes a little bit. See, some of it works and some of it doesn't. So I think there's like, I don't know, some kind of little bit of content that's not apparent here. Wonder if I get rid of This guy right here. I think he might be causing it. Let's clear that frame. Oh, you might have just noticed there too. There was a little this little strip right here actually shows you the rendering process when you're using this technology. So yeah, it's not going to do it here because it's already rendered, but we actually have like a visual rendering indicator now for warped objects, which is really cool. And part of me is like, you know what? If I chose to do this in ActionScript, oh, there we go. Look at him go. Perfect. Yeah, so there was something up with that last keyframe there that was like goofing stuff up. It was like retaining his original pose for whatever reason. But yeah, that's how you use modern rigging in a very basic way to create a very basic snowman dance. Yeah, so pretty cool. We've done a lot of stuff today. We did some coding to create dynamic snowfall. And then we use modern rigging, the asset warp tool, in order to make a snowman dance. So he's having a good time. And I hope you're all having a good time. But it is time to call it quits. So I'm going to say my goodbyes. Thanks everyone again for joining today. And I hope your December is going well. This little snowman, his December is going pretty good. So, yeah. Next week, we're going to have another chat with an AEL, an Adobe Education Leader, like myself. So if you enjoyed the chat with Claudia last week, we have Andrea to look forward to. So yeah, should be fun. Fun. All right, everyone. Have a nice one.